everyone. Hello, it's Kathy at Northstar Prepsteader. Well, today I'm going to pick my first tomatoes of the season. I'm so excited. Let's take a look. There's some that are starting to get really ripe. Because I've had so many slugs and so many bugs, I want to get these before they get attacked. But look at this one. I'm going to let them fully ripen inside. These are a little bit different here. A little bit of a split. There's a good blush and a few others here. This one's pretty good, starting to get soft already. Look at the size of these tomatoes though. Oh, they're so great. And inside here, look at all the tomatoes going. These things are just all huge. Let's see, is this one ready? Oh, this little guy's ready. For those new to my channel, I live in Minnesota, and I'm just showing you what I do in my life. One of the big things I do is garden and preserve through canning and dehydrating. Well, today I have a whole bunch of stuff that has to get done because the garden is producing and things are ready for harvest. So I've got a lot of work to do. I mean, look at my sink full of tomatoes here. I'm gonna weigh them, let you know how much they are. This is just my first picking. So they've done really, really well this year. I mean, look at the size of these tomatoes. Now in the past, I've been lucky to get tomatoes like this size. And usually they look like that on the top, but never ones like this. They're just so beautiful. Okay, so I have 18 pounds of tomatoes from my very first picking, and most of them were just from the tomato plants in my beds. I have the really little ones were from the containers that were around my garden. If you've never seen those before, feel free to go back and look at my other videos on my garden, especially my garden tour, and you can see what's going on. The bed has definitely been growing much better than the containers. So anyway, I've got the 3 tomatoes I planted were delicious tomatoes and porterhouse tomatoes, both of which are beefsteaks, so those are definitely my bigger ones. And also Big Boy, which are also supposed to be big tomatoes, but they haven't gotten that big. I'm not as impressed with Big Boy this year, but then again, most of them ended up in the containers and they just dried out so much faster. I am going to show you today my very quick and easy way to make tomato sauce with very minimal processing. What I'm essentially going to do is roast the tomatoes in the oven, just cook them down. And that's the first step. These are the pans I'm going to use. Normally I can just do these 2 pans, but I have a lot of tomatoes, so I commandeered my roaster and another glass pan. Hopefully this will be enough room for all my tomatoes. I have some really big ones, but this is all my oven will fit right now, so if I have to do extra batches, I will. You want to make sure you choose a pan that's got a fairly high side, because these will produce a good bit of juice and you don't want that flowing over on the side and pouring into your oven. Okay, so I have my oven rack spaced enough so that I can put a couple of the pans on the bottom and then the higher roaster on the top. And I'm going to preheat the oven to 350. I'm going to cut up some onions to put in with the tomatoes. Now these are the very last of my onions from last year from my garden. It's the end of August and look, I still have them. They were the really, really little ones, but you know what? This is perfect for that. Okay, it took me maybe 20 minutes to prep all of these. And this total is 18 pounds of tomatoes. Now the great big ones, what I did is I cut them in half. these great big beef steaks, and then I just lay the cut side down. And any that are like a whole tomato here, you want the cut side down. It's still trimmed off the where the blossom was. And see, these are all face down here. That's so that the moisture can stay in there. If you turn them face up, all the moisture is going to come out, and you want to retain that liquid. Okay, you can season them at this point. I like to use some Italian seasoning. Then I'll season it up more when I have the sauce. Also have just a little bit of pink Himalayan salt, not too much, and a little bit of pepper. You put whatever seasoning you want in here. Okay, now I'm going to drizzle the tomatoes a little bit, just lightly, with some olive oil. And you can add in whatever you want to, but I like to add some onions and peppers to this and just roast them all together. So I'm just going to scatter these in here. I just cut the onions in some chunks, and the same with some peppers. Just makes for a very beautiful and tasty sauce. Drizzle just a little more olive oil because I've got the other veggies in there now. And these are ready to go in the oven. And I've got all my tomatoes in the oven. Okay, I want them to roast for about an hour or so, hour and a half. These are very big, really dense tomatoes, so they might take a little bit longer. But I'll just check on them and let you know. Okay, these are all done roasting. Oh my gosh, it smells like a pizzeria in here. Okay, to test to see if they're done, I mean, you can see that they're all wrinkly and everything. You want to make sure that a fork can go through here very easily and that it mushes all up. If there's any resistance or it's hard at all, then they're not ready. You can see all the juices that came out. We want to keep all that. So now I'm going to let them cool off for a little bit because they're very hot, and then I'll show you the next step. These were in the oven for about an hour and a half. Again, these are very big tomatoes, but so they're all cooked through and nicely mushy. All of this, the onions, the peppers were from my garden, and all my garden tomatoes. Okay, these have been cooling for a while. I got onto some other projects. I had to build something, harvest onions, and mow the lawn. And so these are definitely at room temperature now, which is fine. That's what I love about this process, because it allows for life to come in. So, but they're all cooled off, and you can see they're all wrinkled. At this point, you can just easily slip the skins right off. I know the seasoning is on there, but we'll re-season. If they don't slip right off, no worries. The skin is, if you eat the skin when they're fresh, so they're not going to be a problem if we leave them on here. But for right now, I'm going to show you how easy it is to slip them off. Okay, that took about 5 minutes. I got all the skins off of here. Now it's totally okay to leave the skins on if you want to continue working with it hot. Right now this just happened to be at room temperature for me, so I could do it. And I apologize if it's dark in here. It is nighttime. It's about 10:30 at night, so my light is not very good. Okay, my next step is going to be to blend all this up and then put it in the stock pot. It's much easier to scoop it in than it is to try to pour it in, because yeah, I've tried that before. Makes a mess. So because we're blending it, it doesn't matter if you leave the skins on or not, or if the seeds are in here, or if these other vegetables are whole or not. It just all gets blended really well. So I'm just going to do little batches at a time so I can get it really good and pureed. Okay, look at it, it's so beautiful. Creamy. That's where, if the skins are on here and they're well cooked down, it doesn't matter. They'll blend up. So I just pour this into my pot. Now you'll notice that it is a little bit of a lighter orangey red, and that's just because of the oil that we used in there before, the olive oil that we put in. Okay, so the blender goes for about 45 seconds or so, and it ends up very creamy. I tell you what, I love having a high-speed blender. It has made my whole life so much easier. Okay, I have a stock pot now full of tomato puree. Yes, it looks light, but the next steps are going to take care of that. Because it's so late at night and I don't want to be cooking this down and canning now at this point in time, I'm going to put this in the refrigerator and pick it back up tomorrow. So we'll see you tomorrow. Okay, here's my pot of puree. It has been in the refrigerator overnight, and I'm letting it come to a little bit of room temperature, but also going to heat it back up. You can see it's very thick right now, but as I stir it, some of it's going to thin out, and as I cook it a little bit and heat it up, it's going to thin a little bit more. But putting it in a blender kind of foamed it up a little bit, so I was actually glad to have it sitting overnight to let that reduce just a little bit, get the bubbles out. Now heating it up will get the bubbles out too. So I'm just going to bring this to just a low boil, get it hot before we can it hot. Alright, it's starting to heat up a little bit, but one of the things I want to do is make this sauce a little bit thicker without having to cook it down. I really do hate cooking it down because then I lose volume. So what I do is I add a couple cans of tomato paste to it, and these are just the 6-ounce cans. So what I'm going to do is scoop out some of the sauce into another bowl and then add this and whisk it together and then pour it back in. It's just a little bit too thin to make a nice sauce. My end goal is to have this sauce to be thick enough to just pour right out and to have it for chili or spaghetti sauce. Alright, I'm going to add my mix. You can tell that it's a whole different color too. The puree has got this darker red to it, so it's going to take all my sauce and make it darker, which is fine. That's kind of what I want. You know, every single pot's going to be different of how many cans of paste that you add to it. It all depends on what kind of tomatoes you have. If this was loaded with Roma tomatoes that are much meatier, that'd be different. Or if you had tomatoes that were very thin-walled and very juicy, lots of gel in them, you probably want to add more. There, so not only did I increase the volume of my sauce, I didn't have to take the time to cook it down, and the color is beautiful. Stir this in very well. I'm going to add some Italian seasoning. Alright, I've seasoned this up with Italian seasoning, some garlic powder. You know that it already has the pepper and onion and everything in there from roasting the tomatoes. One of the things I wanted to tell you that when you blend it in, you can leave the tomato skins on, and when you blend it, they usually puree very, very nicely, and that will actually make a little bit thicker sauce. And I normally do that because I will put them in the blender warm and everything, but this time I just wanted to show you how easily it was to take the skins off if that's what you prefer. Okay, I've been soaking my sterilized quart jars and rings and lids in hot water in the sink so that they can be tempered, and I'll just pull them out and put the hot sauce right in there. Yeah, I'm going to be pressure canning the tomato sauce because it takes a lot less time. It takes less fuel with my stove to run it, and it just goes so much faster. Now for anything tomato, you need to add an acid to it because that's that borderline vegetable that's really considered more of a fruit, and it helps with the acidity in there. So I'm doing quart jars, so I need to put in 2 tablespoons per quart. This is much thicker than a tomato soup would be. It's not as thick as a paste, obviously. It's just like a puree that you would get out of a can of tomato puree. So you want to leave about 1/2 inch headspace. So I'm going to clean off the rims. Drying off the rim. This is a microfiber cloth, which is antibacterial. Makes it easier to make sure that I have it all clean and sanitized. Alright, I've got a canner full of 7 quart jars. I put some white vinegar in the water so it doesn't mark up all my jars. I'm going to put my lid on. Remember, I've got the gaskets in here. Checked them all. Close up the lid, let it come to vent, and I'll put the weight on there. I'm going to be canning these for 15 minutes. So I get 7 quarts out of this, and I do have probably about a pint or so left in the bottom of the pot, and I'm just going to let this cool down and then put this in the refrigerator and add it to my next batch, which will be in just a couple days. Because I already have probably another 10 pounds of tomatoes at least ready to go, that I'll be doing another batch in a couple days. And because tomato sauce is fairly acidic and this has already been cooked and everything, there's no problem in this lasting a couple more days in there. If it's something you have like this that you're not sure that you're going to be able to get to canning, you can do one of 2 things. You can either put it in a jar in the fridge and just use it in the next couple days in a meal, or you could freeze it. Tomato sauce does freeze very well. But for right now, I'm just going to let this cool down and store it in the fridge. So I've got my first batch of tomato sauce done for the year. Now because I like one particular sauce and I use it for a multiple of things, I know what flavors I want, I know what consistency I want. So I'm not making like spaghetti sauce and pizza sauce and tomato sauce and having all the different kinds of things. I just make one sauce and then modify it when I go to cook. The 18 pounds of tomatoes gave me 8 quarts of tomato sauce. All my beautiful jars are all done. Now they did settle a little bit. They've been sitting for a while, and I did lose a little bit of liquid, but not too bad. So those are all ready to wash up and mark and put away. Anyway, there is a super quick, easy way to make your tomato sauce without spending tons of hours in the kitchen, and you can process through a lot. I'm limited to my 10-quart stock pot, so that's what I'm able to make at one time. It's the only stock pot I have, and I need my other pots for, you know, my pressure canner for canning, so I can't put stuff in there. But anyway, I'm good with it. I don't have, you know, 100 tomato plants, so what the volume I'm getting in is just fine. In fact, I've picked enough where I'm going to be starting another batch real soon. I'll keep you informed of how much I get. So you guys take care, God bless, always have hope, and I hope you can try this sauce. Let me know in the comments below if you do, and because it really is so quick and easy, and I love the process of this. I've tried so many different kinds of processes, and this is by far the easiest, the quickest, and is just as tasty and good. So, bye-bye.